Overlord was directed by Julius Avery with a screenplay by Mark L. Smith and Billy Ray, not Billy Ray Cyrus. We did not have Miley Cyrus in this movie. That is a very good thing. And the movie basically starts proper with a bunch of American soldiers that are heading on planes into occupied France to basically, liberate France. They want to take down those Germans, the Nazi scum and all that. Focuses on this one particular plane where Bokeem Woodbine, who is the most famous actor in the movie, and that's not knocking him, I've actually enjoyed him in quite a few movies. He's a fine actor and actually very good, especially when he's given some juicy parts. He's only in the movie here a little bit. I will get into spoilers a little bit later and do this, and I'll even put it in the description. But after this particular plane gets shot, other planes get shot down, but after this particular plane gets shot down, only a few of the young men survive. The parachuting and land. Some land in the water, some land. Some land on land, some land in the trees, and that doesn't end too well for them. Basically, since they're in occupied France and they got Nazis on their tails from the very word go, they, they're obviously on edge, but they have this task of getting to this German stronghold in this French village, disabling its communication tower, so D-Day can begin proper. They can liberate France and hopefully liberate the rest of Europe that is under Nazi control. And these few remaining soldiers do also find out that there's a lot of weird shit that the Nazis are doing, the Germans are doing to residents of this particular village. They're doing a lot of experiments and a lot of shit. And you find this out in the trailer. It's not very hard to figure it out. And they have to find a way to basically, obviously, rescue as many people as they can, but also delve into the mystery of what the fuck is going on. And this movie is shit. There's really no other way to say it. None of the actors were particularly bad in this, I will say that much. None of the cast was bad. The cast was actually just fine. Bokeem Woodbine was in it. As I said, Boyce, played by Jovan Adepo. He was in Fences and Mother. He had a bit part in Mother. Mother was shit, by the way. I can see why some people liked it, but I just hate it. You had Ford, played by Wyatt Russell, who's in Cowboys and Aliens, and a young woman named Chloe Mathilde Olivier, and I haven't seen anything she was in. She reminded me of a younger Franca Potente, who was in Run Lola Run, and the few remaining soldiers, Boyce, Ford, and a few others, after seeing Bokeem Woodbine's character dispatch, basically is like, okay, what the hell are we going to do here? They find Chloe. Fortunately, Boyce speaks French because he learned from his grandmother, because she came from Haiti, Louisiana, is where he grew up also. So, heavy French population there. So he learned really, really well, and that serves him well here. Being able to talk to Chloe, and they find out that a whole bunch of shit is going on, and that villagers are being tortured and even taken off to this particular area and stuff like that. And a bunch of shit, I will say this, a bunch of stuff tries to happen. It's about this much of a movie in a giant box filled with foam peanuts. That's about the best way I can really describe this. There is not a ton to it. Now, there are some nice little ideas, but I will say this. They might as well have called this Wolfenstein Overlord, because that's kind of what it reminded me of. It just had these flashes to me of Wolfenstein. I don't know why I thought of that. And the Wolfenstein video games, if you don't know what they are, please look them up. I'm not going to go into them in huge detail here, but that's exactly what I thought of here. It's a basic story. It's generic. It's not very good. None of the performances are particularly bad. There are some one-note characters. There are some very one-dimensional characters. You're supposed to hate the Nazis and cheer the good guys. And that's one thing this movie does pull off pretty damn well. However, it's still not very interesting in any of the attempts at horror or attempts at bad stuff, that the Nazis are doing. it just falls flat because it's just like, oh, okay, that's happening. Oh, look, there's a syringe full of stuff, or oh, there's that, and it just isn't very interesting. I mean, I'm sorry, it's just not very interesting at all. I do not understand why this movie even exists. And it's not, again, that the movie is actually the worst thing I've seen. It's not even close to the worst thing I've seen this year, but it is pretty goddamn bad. So now I'm going to get into spoilers. So I'm just letting you guys know. If you should you see this, if you want to see it, go ahead. But anyway, I'm starting here at 5:30, so 3, 2, 1, go. So after this plane gets shot down and everything, you see Bokeem Woodbine's character get dispatched, and he's like the leader of this whole thing. You find out very little about a lot of the characters. Ford apparently is somebody who has a checkered past, and you got the other sorted like bit characters and stuff like that. One gets blown up by a landmine. You got the one guy that's always cracking jokes and stuff like that. The actress who plays Chloe, I will say, is very beautiful, and also does have a fairly she has a fairly centralized character, but has a little bit like of an edge to her. Like she's doing what she can to survive to protect her younger brother and her aunt, who's a victim of one of these genetic experiments. And you see very brief flashes of her. As the movie goes on, everybody gets separated because, the best idea, of course, when you're 4 soldiers against a whole bunch, against an army or at least a battalion of Nazis, please, by all means, separate and stuff like that. So, Boyce ends up somehow getting into this area where this tower is that they're supposed to disable, so the whole invasion and liberation of France can begin proper. And it's just he finds all this experimental stuff, and some of the most generic stuff. He sees people experimented on, including one of his soldier friends, one of his fellow soldiers. He manages to free him and stuff like that. And he's got all this shit hooked up to him, including his giant syringe that's in his gut. He manages to free him after some Nazi doctors leave, after they experiment on another guy who's literally 10 feet from him, and they somehow don't see him, and I just don't get it. And he frees his friend, and nothing's ever brought up about that. No, nothing of like he turns into some kind of mutated monster later or whatever. And that's basically the idea, is it's the Nazis are trying to create an invincible army, and they're just doing genetic experimentations and injecting people with shit that they've been working on. And there's this one particular German general, like Nazi general, that has an agreement with Chloe, basically to sleep with her. And in turn, he will not take her brother, nor will he turn her over to any of the, to the doctor, the German doctor that's experimenting on everybody. And he's very one-dimensional, and he reminded me of like a German Michael Shannon, and that's not really bad, because he was fine in it. I mean, the acting was fine, but again, the character is very one-dimensional. Of course, he ends up becoming the villain later, after getting the shit beat out of him, and injects himself with a whole bunch of stuff, and turns him, as he got half his face gone and stuff like that, and he turned himself into like this, superhuman evil thing, and it's just ridiculous. There's just no pacing to this movie. I will say, actually, that's a bit unfair. There's no pacing towards the latter half. The setup of war is hell and this kind of stuff, and trying to gain some camaraderie with these soldiers works pretty well. When the genetic experimentation stuff happens, that just feels a little goofy. I just feel with this movie that it tried to take itself too seriously, and it should have played it more for laughs. And to me, it did not play it nearly enough for laughs. Now, to be fair, I'm not saying to make fun of World War II, not one bit. But if you're going to basically go with flat out ridiculous history, revisionist history, and just have the Nazis experimenting on everybody and doing these genetic experiments, which they could have been doing. Who the fuck knows? If you're going to go with something so outlandish like this, then go for the comedy, fun, and just have fun with it. And it just was not very good. It just really, really wasn't. You did have, you saw flashes of like what happens when people get injected with this particular serum, which again reminds me of another thing, Wolfenstein. It was like a Wolfenstein episode 2, I want to say, where zombies were experiments, and zombies. You fought zombie soldiers a lot, and including the final boss, which was a doctor that threw syringes of a serum at you. I wish I was joking. Video gaming was weird back then, which is weird to say back then because I think it was 91, 92 that came out. But with this, like, the doctor's generic. Everybody's generic. And yeah, you're supposed to, want the Nazis to die, and there's certainly nothing wrong with that. But anybody that tries to do all this stuff, like all the noble stuff, Boyce and Chloe are like the only two that have any fleshed out characters. And Ford is, he's kind of there, and everybody else is just kind of throwaway. The kid that plays the little brother is fine. I think the kid did just a decent job. There isn't a whole lot of material to this. Again, it's like about that much of a movie in a box of foam peanuts. And you gotta sift through the foam peanuts to find what you have here. And it just, to me, it was a pretty generic, boring movie. Like even the stuff with the body horror, when this one guy gets shot, towards the end of the movie, one of their comrades, and he's shot and he dies, and then Boyce has one of the syringes from when he was in the in that lab earlier. He finds one of them and takes one of them with him and injects his friend with it, and it doesn't end up going so well. They end up having to shoot him because they're creating zombies, essentially. And a movie should have had more fun. This one should have had more fun with its concept. Sure, you can play some stuff for serious, but they didn't play enough of it for laughs. They didn't have enough of a comedy element to it. It seemed to take itself a bit too seriously, and that's what I particularly didn't like about it. And also, there was just so much stuff that led to nothing. Like I said, the one guy that got freed, that had all the stuff hooked up to him, he never turned into a creature or anything like that. Boyce was around a whole bunch of dead bodies that were seemingly from these genetic experiments, these failed genetic experiments. Nothing bad happened to him coming in contact with all these dead bodies, nothing bad happened. Sure, I may be nitpicking here, and I may be expecting logic, but it's just, I don't know. The movie just, to me, was not fun. And it should have been fun. In the hands of another director, in the hands of, a cast, and the cast wasn't even that bad. In the hands of a director that maybe could have played this more for laughs and had more fun with it, like Paul Verhoeven with Starship Troopers. He had a lot of fun with that kind of concept, which was a goofy, sick send-up of old sci-fi movies. Just a little pumped up, with all the special effects and all that. And it was a lot of fun. This just wasn't. And I was very bored during it, and while again, the performances offended me, I'm not going to say this movie offended me, it also didn't need to exist. It was just purely there. It was just like, okay, here's your movie. And that was really it. It was just there. I didn't find anything thrilling about it. I didn't care too much about any of the characters. No one was in a particular... no one was in any kind of danger. Not once did I think, okay, hey, well, this person got rescued. 3, 2, 1, this person's going to get rescued. So no, it didn't offend me. It was not the worst movie I've seen this year by far, but I'm going to give it a D. It just was not very good. So, yeah, I'll have a grade up here somewhere, or a poll up there for you. And you guys can tell me what you thought. But anyway, so have you seen Overlord? What do you think? Do you think I was too harsh on it? Let me know in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. It's been Real Honesty with John Ritlin, and I'll see you soon.